Porsche built a 1,000 horsepower all-electric race car in complete secrecy, and today we get to drive it.
It's not too often that we see a fully functional, completely secret car roll up at a racetrack, but that's exactly what we have here. A vision for Porsche's future GT racing and a private session for me at one of the world's great international circuits. It's Circuit Ricardo Tormo in Valencia, Spain, a long, flowing track with plenty of off-camber turns, tricky elevation changes, and a long enough straight to see what this thing can really do. But before we hit that track, let's dive a little deeper into the car itself.
From a drivetrain perspective, the GT4e Performance shares a lot with the Mission R concept I was lucky enough to drive a couple of months ago. But from a design standpoint, the Mission R was definitely more of a vision toward what the future race car could look like, whereas this is more of a development test platform to figure out how the thing is going to actually drive. So this looks somewhat similar in terms of silhouette, but pretty radically different in terms of overall design. Don't get me wrong though, this thing still looks wildly, incredibly good. It's got the overall shape of a 718, of course, and you can kind of see where the 718 body is in here below. But you get up to these fenders and there's these massive gulls and vents and big swells to cover the giant racing slicks that are on this thing for today. Now, in terms of the drivetrain layout, this is based on the 718 Club Sport chassis, but of course the engine, the 6 that's in the back normally, is gone, and that's been replaced by one of the 3 separate battery packs that are situated in this car. There's about 82 kilowatt hours of total battery pack inside the GT4 here, split into 3 different battery packs. Where the engine would typically be, we've got about 40 kilowatt hours of battery there. On the floor next to the driver, there's a second battery pack. That's roughly 20 kilowatt hours. And then up front, where the fuel cell would typically be, that's again about another 20 kilowatt hours. That gives you the total 82 kilowatt hour capacity for this thing, which Porsche says would allow it to run in race mode somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes long, which is about how long a typical 911 Cup race runs these days. In addition to that, of course, we actually need something to make the thing go, something for those batteries to connect to. And for that, we have 2 electric motors, one up front and one in the back. That gives this thing a total horsepower somewhere north of 1,000 horsepower in qualifying mode. But interestingly, Porsche engineers told me that they don't really need that front motor to get the maximum performance out of it. What they need it for is for regeneration, which helps this thing drive longer on a given charge. So that's the look and the layout of the thing, but more importantly is how it drives. And to find out, well, it's time to get in the cockpit.
All right, here we go out onto the track in, the GT4. First time out there. This is in mode 3, which is race mode. And I've heard a variety of different power figures quoted for this car in this mode, but it sounds like I'm somewhere in the ballpark of 600 horsepower, which gives me quite a bit more than the original the original 718 GT4 Club Sport. And a little bit more weight to do with too. Now 600 horsepower and no traction control. I do have all-wheel drive, thankfully, but we're out here doing a little car-to-car shooting before. I was on cold tires. I came to a stop and went to accelerate. The car didn't move, but all 4 tires lit up. Nice little smoky burn on the front straight, which I hadn't meant to do. So I'm going to be feeling what this power is like as we get up to speed here. Tires were in an oven to be heated, but I was told to maybe take it a little easier in the first lap to get things up to temperature, so I also need a little time to get myself up to temperature. This is a new track for me, and it is a tricky one. A lot of blind corners, off-camber stuff. Just starting to get into power a little bit. So I got to figure out which way this track goes. Now I'm hoping you can hear me all right. We've got the microphone up here in my helmet here. A lot of people decry the oncoming era of electric race cars and electric racing series as if there's going to be no more sound, but I hope you agree that this car sounds really remarkably good, especially on the outside. Once we get up to speed on the straight, you'll hear what this thing sounds like when it goes screaming by. All right, foot to the floor. Now we're starting to come up to temperature. We're starting to feel a little bit better. No traction control, as I mentioned, and no ABS either. So we'll see how the braking feels in this car as we get the temps up, tires and brakes. And driver. All right, here we go. First time down the front straight. I'm out, foot to the floor. All right, 180, 190, 200, 210, 220, 230. All right, I'm gonna brake right here just to take it easier for the first lap. Very stable, very smooth, fast turn one. This actually feels really nice. The power delivery is very nice and smooth. I was talking with Porsche factory driver Tim Bernhardt earlier, who suggested that smooth is really the way to go. No abrupt braking, no abrupt steering. That this car has a lot of grip, but it reacts best to smooth, steady input. So that's going to be my focus for now. Now again, we've got somewhere in the ballpark of 600 horsepower through all four wheels. But really, the front motor isn't helping that much when it comes to acceleration and overall lap time. It's really there more to help for the regenerative braking. This car, though it weighs more than the normal 718 Club Sport, actually has smaller brakes. Weighs more and has more power, but has smaller brakes. It's not usually the way things work in motorsports. Usually you've got a heavier car that goes faster, you want some big brakes. The reason you can get away with smaller brakes here is because this, of course, has regenerative braking. And through all four wheels has regenerative braking. One of the Porsche engineers told me that though this thing can put down up to 1,000 horsepower in acceleration, it also has enough torque to effectively generate the same amount of force under braking without even relying on those physical brakes at all. So that's a huge part of what's going to make this car work in an endurance racing series, is regenerating all of that power and bringing it back to the battery pack to let you go longer. We've got about an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack here, but they think through the course of an average race, this car would regenerate about 20 or 30 kilowatt hours of battery, which means a smaller pack and longer run times. All right, we're up over 240 kilometers this time, harder on the brakes. All right, I'm getting more comfortable. I'm going to talk a little less and drive a little harder now. Tiny formula-style steering wheel is positioned really high, pointed almost at my throat. The feedback is really good to the steering wheel. It's pretty light, good boosting, so if I were doing a longer race in this, I think I'd feel reasonably comfortable, but man, it's maybe 90 degrees each way, lock to lock. It means I can take some of the tighter turns like this right-hand hairpin that's coming up here, without my shoulder having to come up off the seat even. Foot flat to the floor. Really does feel very nicely planted. Plenty of grip. Without my having to really worry about feathering the throttle coming out of tighter corners. So far so good under braking too, but downhill braking zones like this one are a little tricky. Okay, back on the front straight. Feel the aero really pushing me into every bump on the front straight here. 200. Turn one. Oh, okay. Now we're starting to get the aero a little bit more in the corners too as I'm coming up faster and faster. Porsche says this car is well quicker than even a 911 GT3 Cup car. Oh, and it certainly feels pretty quick. I was running some practice laps in R Factor 2 coming up to this in a 911 GT3 Cup, and I think I'm already running quicker lap times than this. They've got the throttle curve mapped really nicely in the accelerator, so you know, an EV has really quick acceleration and really instant throttle response. Despite that, I don't really feel like I need to be careful. I really am pretty much getting my right foot to the floor not long after the apex. So nicely planted. A lot of tricky braking zones at this course here in Valencia. Really sets up good passing, especially for the MotoGP bikes when they come here. This is primarily used for MotoGP, but it makes things really tricky getting the car slowed down, especially this long left-hander here, the last corner sequence. Come up over this crest, braking while turning. Try to get back to the apex. Oh, just got it. In the foot to the floor. Back out on the front straight. Oh, ho, ho. 190, 200, 210, 220, 230, 240. Oh, just 250 there that time. I don't know how much math I can do right now, but I think that's in the 150 mile an hour ballpark. Not too bad for my first stint out in this thing. Really smooth over the curbs, not getting unsettled at all. I'm braking way too early in every corner, something I'm still getting the feel of. But the brake pedal feel itself is quite good. In a lot of EVs, you have this kind of mushy brake pedal where you have this really vague transition between the regen phase and actually engaging the physical braking calipers. But on this thing, the pedal is very firm and very consistent all the way through its travel. So whenever I do get through the regen and get down to the real brakes, it's just a nice, steady, consistent feel. It's really nice, really easy to drive. All right, box, I was just told. So one last hard braking zone into turn one here. And then we'll start slowing things down a little bit for a cool down lap. Oh, what a rush.
Between sessions, I was able to look at some of my telemetry and see just how I was doing. Here I learned why the brake pedal feels as good as it does. That's because it has zero connection to either the physical or the regenerative braking systems. This car relies entirely on brake-by-wire, and so the pedal feel is entirely artificial. The car itself decides how much regen to provide based on how hard you're stomping on the pedal and when to call in those physical brakes to help. That division of labor, along with thousands of other channels of data, is all logged for every single lap on the track. With that knowledge, I headed back out for another run and promptly found the limits of those brakes.
All right, heading out for session two. I'm going to talk a little less this time. Focus a little more on getting my lines right and learning this track and getting the feel for the car. Nice bit of lock up there, holy cow. Pretty sure I got all four of this lock up there. Okay, I found the braking limit and stepped right over it. That felt a little better. Felt a lot better. A lot better. Now it's time for Quali Mode.
Before Quali Mode, the car went back on the charger. In an ideal world, charging at 350 kilowatts, the car will go from 5% to 85% state of charge in just 15 minutes. That's enough juice for roughly 30 minutes of on-track action. Here we're only charging about 1/3 that rate, so the recharges took a little bit longer, but even so, it seemed like by the time I'd gotten myself a drink and a little bit of extra coaching, it was time to strap back in again. This time, I was told to be a little more careful with the throttle, and of course to go out and have a good time, but not for a long time. With the extra electrical consumption that comes with the additional power in Quali Mode, this would be a shorter session. I only had a few laps to get my qualifying time in.
All right, we're heading back out on the track in Quali Mode, dialed up to Mode 9. Eat that, Super Nintendo fans. Okay, 1,000 horsepower, no traction control. Here we go. Okay, yeah, that's much quicker now. Take a warm-up lap here to get everything up to temperature and to feel out the additional power. Oh my God. Oh, this is just a warm-up lap. Oh my. So the fun thing about a car where you can just dial up the power like that is my brakes haven't gotten any better, the aero hasn't gotten any better, but suddenly I've got a good 30% more power than I had the last time I drove this thing. So I'm gonna have to bring those braking zones back a little bit at a minimum. Probably be a little more careful with my right foot on the gas too. But honestly, this car feels so nicely balanced. The weight distribution is so good that I really didn't feel like I was running the risk of doing anything stupid in it. Higher speeds, of course, can bring you to the point of doing something stupid more quickly. So we'll try not to do that today. And interestingly, this doesn't this doesn't feel like a 911 race car or even the 718 Club Sports, because it is so evenly balanced. With a 911, when you're driving that hard on the track, you always got to be thinking about what the rear end's doing, because there's so much weight hanging out back that is coming in late to the corner almost after you, well, literally after you. So you need to brake differently and turn differently. But with this, you don't really have to think about the weight of the car because it's so evenly wrapped around you. It just feels like an extension of yourself. All right, here we go. First time on the straight with 1,000 horsepower. Good Lord. Here we go. 200, 210, 220, 230, 240. Good Lord. 250, 260. Oh, we hit a speed limiter. Okay. 268. Pretty good. 268. Okay. On my first lap. Yeah, the car just absolutely leaps out of corners. The suspension is, of course, incredibly stiff on this thing, but you can still see the nose lifting up a little bit when I come out of the corners. Much higher speeds coming into the corners. Even these flat sections I gotta take a little more easily because I can feel the car reacting more violently to just little twitches of my foot as I hit an imperfection in the track or something like that, so. Oh, but wow. Brake a little early to there. This is a tricky corner up the hill and then flat around over this crest to the left. Oh, not quite flat now. That was flat before. Okay, here's my final lap. I'm gonna shut up and enjoy it. Forgive me. So much more violent in this mode.
It's really impressive not only that Porsche developed this thing in complete secrecy, but now that they've got this car as good as it is, and it's really just kind of bolted together from a 718 Club Sport with a lot of batteries and stuff thrown in here as they can. Porsche expects to have a consumer-ready version of this car by somewhere about 2026. So if you run a racetrack, that means you've got about 4 years to bring charging to pit lane.
All right, that's it for my stint here in the GT4 e-Performance. What'd you think? You excited about the future of electric racing? As excited as I am? Let us know in comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.